This is not just another Super Bowl, this is the moment when sports, money, media, and attention across the United States collide in a single night, and most viewers never realize what is really happening behind the scenes. While millions focus on the score, the commercials, and the halftime show, something much bigger is unfolding at the same time, and that is exactly what makes this Super Bowl different from every one before it. According to publicly available information, this year's Super Bowl is breaking records before kickoff even happens, and not just in viewership. Ticket prices have reached historic highs, advertising slots are more valuable than ever, and brands are competing for seconds of attention rather than minutes. But the real shift is not happening on the field. It is happening in how the Super Bowl is being consumed, measured, and quietly transformed, with streaming platforms playing a larger role than ever. Viewing habits are changing in real time, and the league is watching closely because what happens this year could redefine how the event works going forward. What makes this even more interesting is that many of the biggest decisions tied to this Super Bowl were made months ago, and most fans never heard about them. From how ads are targeted, to how audience data is analyzed, to how moments are designed to go viral within seconds, every detail is planned with a level of precision that didn't exist a decade ago. And this is where things start to get interesting, because the game is no longer just about football. According to analysts, the Super Bowl has quietly become a testing ground for future media strategies. Brands are no longer paying just for exposure, they are paying for behavioral signals: what people rewind, what they skip, what they share, what they search right after a play or a commercial. This data is now just as valuable as the broadcast itself, and this year it is being collected at an unprecedented scale. And then there is the halftime show, which on the surface looks like entertainment, but behind the scenes functions as one of the most analyzed media moments of the entire year. Every camera angle, every transition, every pause is designed to maximize retention across multiple platforms at the same time. What most viewers don't realize is that the performance is no longer judged only by ratings, but by engagement patterns that continue long after the show ends. But here is where the story takes an unexpected turn, because according to industry sources, this Super Bowl is also being used to answer a much bigger question: can a single live event still dominate attention in an era of endless content? The answer to that question could reshape not just sports but the entire entertainment industry, and the signs so far are surprising, because early indicators suggest that attention is not disappearing, that it is concentrating. And the Super Bowl remains one of the few moments where that concentration still happens naturally, without forcing it, and that fact alone is why so much is riding on this night, far beyond the final score. Because once the game ends, the real analysis begins, and what is discovered afterward may change how events like this are produced, promoted, and monetized in the future. And that brings us to the part most people never talk about. What most viewers never see is how much of this night is built around prediction rather than reaction. Before the first snap even happens, models are already running behind the scenes, estimating which moments will hold attention, which ones will drop off, and which ones will trigger second screen behavior. According to publicly available reporting, broadcasters and advertisers are no longer guessing. They are testing scenarios in advance and adjusting in real time as the game unfolds. This is why certain camera cuts feel faster this year, why replays are framed differently, why commentary pacing subtly changes after big moments. None of this is accidental. It is part of a broader shift toward optimizing live events for modern attention spans while still keeping the experience familiar enough to feel authentic, and that balance is incredibly difficult to maintain. Another detail most people miss is how commercials are no longer treated as interruptions, they are treated as content blocks. That is why brands are teasing their ads days in advance and tracking reactions before the Super Bowl even starts. By the time the commercial airs, its success is already being measured against pre-release engagement rather than just airtime, and this changes how success is defined. According to analysts, this year's Super Bowl ads are expected to generate more value off broadcast than on it. Clips optimized for social platforms are prepared in advance. Reaction content is anticipated and in some cases directly encouraged. The broadcast becomes the spark, not the endpoint, and that strategy is now central to how the event is monetized. Then there is the audience itself, because while the Super Bowl still attracts millions of traditional viewers, a growing portion is watching differently. Some are streaming, some are watching delayed highlights, some are following along through live commentary rather than the game feed. This fragmented behavior used to be seen as a risk. Now it is seen as an opportunity, publicly available. Data suggests that engagement windows are being measured in layers, not just who watched but how they watched and what they did next. Did they search? Did they share? Did they stay? And those patterns are shaping decisions for future seasons in ways fans never directly notice. What makes this especially important is that the Super Bowl is one of the last remaining events where advertisers can still observe large-scale real-time behavior across demographics at once. That makes it uniquely valuable as a reference point. And this year that reference point is more complex than ever. There is also a subtle psychological element at play, because anticipation now starts weeks earlier. Trailers, teasers, speculation all extend the event far beyond game day, and when the moment finally arrives, it feels bigger not because it is longer but because it has been mentally rehearsed by the audience. This amplification effect is one of the reasons watch time remains so strong despite changing habits. And yet for all this planning, there is still uncertainty, because live events are unpredictable, and that unpredictability is exactly what makes the Super Bowl such a powerful test. Environment.No algorithm can fully control what happens next, and that tension between control and chaos is where the real story sits. Because when this Super Bowl ends, the outcome that matters most may not be the final score. It may be the data patterns that emerge afterward, and those patterns are already pointing toward a future that looks very different from the past. And to understand why that matters, we need to look at what comes next. In the hours after the Super Bowl ends, attention does not disappear. It migrates. And that migration is now one of the most valuable signals in modern media, according to industry observers. This post-game window is where long-term impact is decided because it reveals what actually stayed with viewers once the spectacle was over. Search trends spike in unexpected ways, clips outperform full segments, moments that seemed small during the broadcast suddenly dominate online discussion, and this gap between what felt big live and what lasts afterward is exactly what organizations are studying most closely this year. Because it exposes how memory and attention really work in a crowded content environment. What is especially notable is how quickly narratives now form. Within minutes of the final whistle, storylines solidify and spread across platforms, and once those narratives lock in, they shape public perception far more than the full 3 hours of the game ever could. This compression of meaning is one of the defining characteristics of modern media, and the Super Bowl sits at the center of it. According to publicly available analysis, leagues and broadcasters are already using this data to rethink future broadcasts, not just in terms of presentation but in how moments are designed to be remembered. This includes everything from pacing to framing to how key plays are contextualized for viewers who may only see them once, and this leads to a critical question that goes beyond football. If attention is no longer continuous but selective, what does success actually look like? The Super Bowl is helping answer that by showing that dominance is no longer about total watch time alone. It is about resonance. Resonance is what carries moments beyond the broadcast. It is what turns seconds into discussions and clips into culture, and this year's Super Bowl appears to be generating that resonance in more distributed ways than ever before. That suggests the event is not losing relevance. It is changing shape. There is also a broader implication here for live events across industries, because if the Super Bowl can adapt to fragmented attention while still holding cultural gravity, other formats will follow. This makes the game a reference point not just for sports but for how mass experiences are built in the digital age. As this transition continues, one thing becomes clear: the Super Bowl is no longer just a championship game. It is a live experiment in attention economics played out in front of millions, and the results of that experiment will influence decisions long after the confetti is gone. Which brings us to the bigger picture, because the most important outcome of this Super Bowl may not be who wins but what it reveals about how people choose to watch, share and remember, and understanding that may be the key to understanding where media is headed next. And that is exactly what the next conversation needs to focus on.